was their finances were now under attack in their mind because they went to the bank as instructed, and now somehow or another these people knew how to access their bank. The long and short of this story is we get the money back to them, but they're still nervous about what we did. So what's the lesson learned? The lesson learned is after you leave today, you still may be a little bit nervous and self-doubting when somebody calls and says, we need the money, we need it now, you need to follow these instructions. Think of this word of advice. Do not trust those people. Trust your instincts. We know that this is not going away. We know that we can turn the tide on these people, and we'll try to arrest them. We'll try to get your money back. But that's very important from my perspective. I know because my mother and father-in-law almost did the same thing until I told them and jumped in front of them and said, don't do it. So having a police officer, a chief of police for a son-in-law for 40 years in the business, and they were doubting my word every time they asked my advice, there's no reason why you should doubt yourself. Take advantage of your instinct and don't trust them.
Thanks, Chief. So the booklet, I want to again remind you, that's a good resource if you want to get information on an ongoing basis. But there are a couple of takeaways I want to share with you. Number one is about the phone call. The longer you stay on the phone for any reason, the more likely it is your phone number is going to be traded into the dark web. That's why we tell you to hang up. I want you to think about that. Hang up, period. That is the only reaction you should have when someone calls you that you do not recognize and asks you anything that has to do with your personal affairs. Number two, it was said before, and sadly this is absolutely the case, that most fraud is committed within the family. That also creates all kinds of other pressures, emotional and everything else. Consider the following. If you are doing anything involving the family situation, the best defense is to share what you're doing with at least one other trusted family member. There's never harm that'll come from saying to someone else in the family, just wanted you to be aware I'm doing this. Because that in and of itself is going to create an information exchange which gives you the strength of knowing that you're testing the question, whether this makes sense. And you know, this is what we have grown up thinking about. If it's something that you can't tell anyone else, that's the first indication there may be a problem. And a lot of times you're inclined not to talk about things like this because of the points that were made earlier about being buried. I want you to know, I have an ask of you, by the way. Part of what AARP is doing is we have a fraud watch network of volunteers who are trained to go out into community and maybe gather 25 people and go through a very detailed hour-and-a-half program on very specific scams and how to avoid them, etc. If any of you are interested in being trained as a volunteer, I'd love to have you, especially folks who are veterans who might be willing to take it back to your own chapter or to your own community. So please, if you have any interest at all in doing that, we'd love to partner with you, because part of the challenge is acknowledging, it's been made now more than once, as the Chief said, we're in partnership here. In order to effectively get the word out, we need to work with our Secretary of Veterans Affairs. We need to work with our credit union partners and the banks and the DA's office and the police, etc. So you actually have the power to influence this as well by being trained in a very modest effort of time, and it'll really be helpful to the work that we're trying to do at AARP to get the word out. So thank you very much.
So the systems that are in place, and again, I think go back to the aspect of what has been mentioned, trust your instincts. You know, I think show of hands here, who does not have a cell phone? Who doesn't carry cell phones? And you may not, and you may still have a caller ID at home as well. And your phone, there are trickery out there where somebody could take a loved one's number and program it so that when you see that number, you think is your daughter Mary, but is not Mary on the line. Even if, again, if somebody's asking you for something you don't feel comfortable, hang up. You can always call back Mary, and I trust you, it'll go back to Mary's number, not that person's number. So have that sense of trust, of instinct, that if Mary is fine, in this case your daughter or son or any loved one, there's not an emergency that's going to be too great that they're calling you and it needs to be responded immediately. Hang up, take a couple of minutes to think about what it was that they were asking, and if it doesn't make sense, then move on. Understand that most times folks are fishing for information, and there's not a real dire emergency on the other side. So, again, in our resources, the most important thing that we have in our communities here in Massachusetts is a veteran service officer, a veteran's veteran in every community. Whether you are here at Braintree or any other of our cities and towns across Massachusetts, that veteran service officer is somebody you can rely upon for some just information, just awareness, and just another voice of reason, another veteran or veteran family that you could trust upon. Thank you.
In my opening remarks, I talked about us being on the front line of identifying abuse. And I'd like to give a couple of examples that we've seen recently. One had a good, if not happy outcome. The other was an unhappy outcome. The first one with the relatively good outcome, we had a 73-year-old member of the credit union. She had a savings account with us forever and had a lot of money in the account. One time, a few weeks ago, a checking account was opened. After we went through our identification process, we approved the account. Shortly thereafter, our internet account access was opened on the new checking account, along with electronic bill payment. And very shortly thereafter, 2 large checks were cut payable to another person. We actually we employ a lot of sophisticated, intelligent electronics to identify transactions that are out of the pattern of people's normal business practices with us. Those flag these transactions, and with the training our people have provided, we reached out to this member, and she said, no, in fact, she had not opened a checking account, had not signed up for internet account access, had not opened bill payment, and did not ask for some checks to be mailed. It turned out her daughter had taken over her account. We were able to stop those checks, so she didn't lose any money. So I can say, to me, that's a successful, but I think heartbreaking outcome that her actual caregiver, her daughter, had taken advantage of her. The other instance, which is within the last month, was a member who'd been with us. He was in his mid-70s, been a member for many, many years, had a lot of money on deposit with us, and he contacted us and asked us to send a $20,000 wire to a bank in Mexico. We thought that was very unusual, so we contacted him. He assured us that he was selling a timeshare and that the broker representing the sale needed this money, but he would be getting the money back once the timeshare was sold. The world doesn't work that way, and we tried to explain that to him, but he was adamant that we send the wire. We were not able to convince him, which we found very frustrating. Ultimately, because he ordered us to do so, and put it in writing to instruct us to do it, we did send that wire. We reported it to the Financial Crimes Enforcement Agency in Cincinnati, but ultimately he was out that $20,000. We never did learn whether there was in fact a timeshare, whether it was sold. He stopped taking our phone calls. So that was very frustrating for us because we really think he got taken advantage of for a lot of money and we couldn't stop.
Well, let me first admit to you that if there was a scenario where my father got a phone call in the middle of the night that they needed money because I was in jail, I think my father's response would have been good, keep him there. I'm going to use the word verify as everyone else has in terms of a question that you can ask because in verifying the call or the computer email that you receive, it brings you value. And that's an important piece to trying to understand whether or not you are, in fact, being scanned. So don't be embarrassed. If something happens to you, you need to be forthcoming with it because it can help someone else. I know sometimes people get, I know of a particular situation here in Braintree of a gentleman who was scammed, who was embarrassed by it, didn't tell anybody, including family members for a couple of weeks, because he was just distraught over it. And eventually, we were able to help him through the work of the police department, but he was embarrassed and therefore didn't want to be, forthcoming with it. And I think upon reflection, he realized that if he had been forthcoming, that perhaps someone else wouldn't have been scammed. So don't be embarrassed, it happens. There are errors that we all make in life. Stand up and be counted on it so that we can help you along the way. And we are here as a community, not only my office, but through the police department, coordination with our BSO, Cynthia Harris, as well as working with the DA's office. There is a line of defense, a line of information that can be helpful to you should you find yourself in a situation like this. And the only other the only other piece I'll offer is this flyer, this 10 ways in which to protect yourself. Keep it, put it on the refrigerator, put it by your computer, put it by your phone, because it really does offer steps that are important to a situation that you may find yourself in. So don't discard this flyer. I think it's very helpful. And it's a friendly reminder of steps that you can take to protect your identity should you find yourself in a situation such as this. Thank you.
So if the district attorney felt pressure about having to say just a few words so that you can get to your lunch, I don't think the two of us feel being at the end here. So needless to say, we're talking about resources. When it comes to resources, the department is here to help any of our membership that has having a problem or that feels that they have been scammed. And naturally, all they need to do is either email us or contact us at department headquarters. We will then try to make sure that you are given the appropriate resource to go to help alleviate that situation. And one of the biggest things that we get calls about is not kind of a scam that would be happening to you over the telephone. Most of the time, it's a loved one. Because most of our members that are older need the assistance of a loved one to do things. They may need them to help write out checks. They may need them to actually make sure that they take their medications properly or oversee their overall finances. And you'll find that most of the time, it is that possible loved one, either a child or a son, daughter, niece, that actually is writing checks to themselves too, because they're keeping track of everything. And so when you hear of something like that, or you know of anything like that, you want to contact us so we're able to let the Veterans Administration know that unfortunately this person isn't able to take care of themselves and they need to have a fiduciary sent up so that the fiduciary would look over their incomes that's coming in and what's going out to make sure that it's proper and that they're taken care of.
Okay, I think lunch is ready. So, very brief. I want to touch on what everyone was saying here too is also, verify. Ronald Reagan said, trust but verify. Also, don't rush into anything. Pump the brakes on this. I suggest to everybody that if you have, how many has voicemail on their phone? Okay, I would just let it. If you don't know the number, let it go to voicemail. Okay, because when you go to voicemail, yes, they can leave you a crazy message, but you've had a few minutes to think about it. You know it's not urgent. Again, if it's someone calling, if your daughter or your son calling from another phone, they're going to leave you a message and say, hey, Mom, I'm calling you from my friend's cell phone. Don't call. Unless you talk to these folks, you're probably better off not even picking up. Because when you pick up, you get more phone calls than the person that doesn't pick up. It's an algorithm. I never knew I would ever use that word in public. I think Sister Maria Jew told me that word. I still don't understand what it is, but they use this, and they know, obviously the person that doesn't pick up is going to get less phone calls than the person that picks up, and the person that does talk is going to get even more. And the more you talk to these people, they're crafty, they're smart, and they get information out of you that you shouldn't do. Don't hoss around and play games with them. Just hang out again. And there's some information here, the booklets, again with the Sheriff's Department. I left some brochures on the table. If anyone wants me or someone from our office to come out and give a presentation on scam prevention, we do work with the District Attorney's Office, and we also partner with the local police department. So again, enjoy your lunch and don't get scammed.
Hey, it's 30 seconds until lunchtime. We have prizes. But before we do anything else, let me just ask a round of applause for all the panelists who are here today. A round of applause for Handsome Federal Credit Union and for the Disabled American Veterans for hosting and working together to bring the program to you. Now, let's find out who's going to win here. You got your stubs? Everybody ready? This is the trip to Europe. Not quite a trip. 598062. 062.
You just need your social security number.
Just raise your hand, we'll bring it to you.
Everybody applaud the winners.
Okay. 598055. 055. They have to be here. Over here?
Applaud the winners.
Okay, thank you. 598037. 037. Right here in front. 598041. 041. 598052. 052. 020 is the last three. 598020. 020? Okay. How many more bags you have? Oh, four? Okay. 598002. 002. That's the first one. One of the first people who was here. 598043. 043.
Two more?
Now, just so you know, in those bags, there's a lot of duplicate stuff, but there's also something special in there too, way down the bottom. 598058. 058. On the corner.
And one more?
Maria, one more?
One more.
Here's the finale. 598016. 016. Over here. Okay, well, good luck, and I'm not going to tell you what it is, but you're going to need a coin to do some scratching. We want to help the Commonwealth, right? All right, folks, thank you. Lunch is going to be served. We're all here to answer your questions. Once again, thank you for coming.